To take our working with JSON a little bit farther, now we're going to work with the Openweathermap API. So the first thing I'm going to do is create my file. So I have a blank here. And this first part we will just work with the text and the icon image that's part of it and stuff like that. But we're not going to be working with our animated sprite sheets yet. First, we want to verify we can connect to the Openweathermap API, grab the JSON, parse that, and find the key things that we are going to be looking for. So I'm just going to make a paragraph, and on this paragraph, I'm going to give it an idea of status. This is where we're going to just print out some messages to us while we're working so we can keep track of what is happening. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to just simply make an image, and I'm going to set its ID. Because we're just going to grab the current image icons that are part of Openweathermap API with that. So this is now the core of what we need. Now we're going to jump over to Openweathermap and take a look at the website. So after you sign up with Openweathermap and create your free account, the next thing you're going to do is go to My API Keys. Under My API Keys, you can now create a key. So when I do this, I click on Generate and I give a name. Oh, got to give the name and then hit Generate, my bad. And I'll just call this weather text because this is the first one we're going to be working with. I hit generate, and now we can see there is that key. So I am going to copy that, select it and copy it, and now I am done with that page. Let's go back over here, and I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to save this file as my API key.js. Now, if I want, I could make a scripts folder, put it into it the same way I'm going to have an assets folder and put all my images in. But we're only going to have 2 scripts, so you can decide whether you want to do that or not. I'm just going to leave it out for now. And now that I have this file selected, I'm just going to go create a constant to store this. And set it equal to, and inside quotes, single or double, doesn't matter. Let's hit return because it returned there. And that gives me my API key. Now I'm putting this in a separate file because normally if we're doing a project and as we're doing the project, we're going to have API keys. We typically don't make our API key publicly facing. So we would have it on the server, and then when we run the script, it would access that key on the server. But because we're doing everything client side, we don't have that same luxury, but I'm just keeping it separate here so it starts to prime your brain that that's what I would be doing in a more production ready kind of project. The next thing that we need to do, of course, is we need to store a reference to it. So I can now say script source. And the source is simply going to be API key.js. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to write my JavaScript inside a separate file. So knowing that, once again, I can just do script source, and then I will just call this my weather.js. Now, you'll notice, if you're paying attention, we don't have that file yet. So let's make that, and we can save this, and we can create a new file, Command or Control N, save, and weather.js. Just got to clean up my typing there. Been a little bit sloppy apparently. Okay, so now our project is off to a good start. This is where we're going to be writing everything. I don't really need to leave this open, but we'll leave it there for a moment until we're actually using it. Well, actually, we are using it. But the good part is, by loading the JavaScript file here, it now puts this variable in memory. So then this script file will have access to that particular key. So we'll probably go and add some CSS and clean up this file a little bit later, some style information, but in the meantime, we're done working with that. So our next real focus is going to be on the weather.js. This is where we need to turn our attention. So what I want to do is gain access to status. So it's document, query selector, and then hashtag status. It's really common when you put an ID on something, then you use query selector to grab it, that you forget that, and then you're like, why is my code not working? I don't understand. It's because you forget to put in the hashtag. So I'm guilty of that. On a very recent project, I had that happen where it was not accessing. I'm like, why is it not working? Oh yeah, I forgot the hashtag, duh. So icon image. Wow, typing is sloppy today. Document, query selector. This time it's going to be hashtag icon image. Now if I look over here, I can just verify ID icon image, ID status. Okay, we're in good shape. And it's working. Now, what I'm going to do is say status text content. And we will set the text content of status equal to, in this case, I'm just going to go ... Now let's save this. One thing about working with Openweathermap API, when we're grabbing the JSON, parsing the JSON, loading the JSON, doing all of that, it's required that we have to either have our page hosted online, so it's on an actual server, or we have to use the live server plugin or equivalent in our code editor to be able to see it. If I just, from my File Explorer or Finder, if I double click on the file, it opens in the browser, I will be getting cross-domain script error because I'm trying to access something while I'm on a different domain and it gets grumpy with me. So it has to be live for it to function. So a little Go Live button is down here. That will work. If you don't see a little Go Live button, you can always go under View, Command Palette, and then choose Live Server, and then that will open things with the live server. And to open up the file, and we see ... I'm going to take this opportunity to open up my JavaScript console here. So while I'm working and every time I hit save, if I see red error messages over here, I'll be like, oops, got something to fix. So then we need to work with it that way. Now, before we start writing some more JavaScript on here, we're going to take a look at doing a call to Openweathermap API. So what we can see is the API, when we call it to get the JSON, we have a lot of different options as we do it. We can do it by city name. We can do it by city ID, so there's an actual database where cities have IDs attached to them. We can do it by latitude and longitude. We can do it by zip code. So there's a lot of different ways of accomplishing it. Now I'm going to go ahead and use lat and long. I like that. Now, in previous incarnations of this project, what we actually did is we put a button, you'd click, and it would show the current weather of wherever you were when you clicked on that button. So if you're at home, if you're at work, if you're at grandma's, if you're at the beach, it would show the weather information for that specific location. Since then, and more recently, the browsers have gotten much more secure when it comes to location settings. So you have to enable the privacy setting for location to be allowed to be used by your browser. And it's turned off by default on Mac OS. I'm not sure about Windows, but it does break it. So knowing that, we're going to just hard code a location in. So to figure out lat and long, I just typed in a zip code that I wanted, lat and long, and it gave me the numbers that I am looking for. So when we see W here, this tells us that we're in the west, it's going to be a western number. So technically when we put the number into our code, we'll use a negative version of it. East would use positive, northern hemisphere, then we are going to be using positive. We would be using negative numbers if we're going below the equator. that's how we need to process them. So it gives us the north and west instead of positive and negative values. So if you remember your geography days from your K-12 education and working with latitude and longitude, you can go nuts with it as you try and understand it. Another way that you can find lat long is you can go hop on to Google Maps and right-click for the location, and it will give you the lat long of a very specific location. I'm just going for more general right now. So now I know I have some numbers that I can work with on that. So to set this weather, we're going to write a couple functions here, and we're going to introduce its it's kind of a modified version of an if statement. It's called try catch. So the way that we're going to implement it is we'll to create a function, and I'll call it function location lookup. And as we look up the location here, I'm just going to put my end in here and locate. Wow, fingers are fat today. So there's my location lookup. Now what I do is I say try, and then put in a curly brace, return, and now we're going to try something. So I'm going to set a constant for my latitude, and my latitude will be 45.1231. And wow, I really am struggling on the typing today. And our longitude will be negative 93.3743. Now with that, what we're going to do is we are going to call a function that we will write in a moment called setWeather, and we'll pass in the latitude and the longitude. So if we don't want to use lat long, we can use zip code. So you could pass in a zip code if you wanted. We'll demonstrate the code for that as well in a bit. Now when we use try catch, we say try this, and if it fails, then catch the error and pass on the error. So we'll set the status text content equal to, and I'm going to use a template literal here, so I use tick marks, not single quote or apostrophe, but the tick marks, and say unable to your location, unable to get your location, error, colon, and now I'm going to do $, curly brace, and error.code, because errors give us codes, period, and then they also give us $, curly brace, error message. So it will give us both of those if it fails during set weather. So it's going to try this, but if we get an error, then boom, we're going to get a failure. That happens. Now let's go down here and function set weather. We'll just do lat and long. Now I'm using lat and long here because if we go back and look at our current weather data API and look at lat and long with it, we will see that it uses lat and long as the values. You can see this is written nearly as template literal. They just don't have the $signs on it. So now what we can do is go let open weather data be equal to a pair of curly braces. This is where we're going to store that JSON. And now our HXR will be a new XML, ML HTTP request. And I'm just going to put a little comment in here and set weather. Now, so this is like what we did before with the Brady JSON. We say hxr.open, and now inside our quotes, we're going to get the JSON. And now we are going to put in, I'm going to do a template literal, so I can just put that long and my API key in here. And what we're doing is https://. Now, if I look here, I'm just going to go and grab that. It's that simple. Now I'm going to paste it here. API Openweathermap data 2.5 weather lat equals, and now I'll just put a $sign on it. Oh look, color change tells us it's working. Second $sign on it, woohoo! And a third $sign for our API key that we are putting in. And now the API key, let's delete that and go API key, which is, if we look here, what we called it. So now let's save that. All right. So now that allows us to open this XML HTTP request, which we are abbreviating as HXR, which is the common way it's written pretty much every instance. Now I can hit return. And hxr.response type. Hey, code completion worked. Sweet. It's going to be equal to, inside quotes, I put the word text. Now hxr.add event listener. So all of this is the same as we did before. So whether we're loading a local file or we're loading off of a server, the only thing that's really different is the path name for where we're opening our HXR request. Now we have function, quotes, curly braces, and now I'm going to go put down here false because that's how we complete our add event listeners. And now if hxr.status is going to be equal to triple zeros, or triple equal sign 200. I don't know what zeros came from. I was looking ahead of myself. So that means if the status is completely and absolutely equal to 200, then we had success. So, I mean, I can log that out and say, oh, heck, even better than logging it out. So then we log that out. Else text content is going to be equal to, this time because we're putting a variable in, we'll do a template literal. So backtick error colon $, curly brace, hxr.status. All right. So if we do this, we still have one more line we need to put in here. Well, a couple more lines, but to make it actually happen, we have to call hxr send. If we don't call hxr send, it doesn't actually do any of the stuff that we've typed here. Now, finally, when it's all said and done here, we need to call location lookup. Now let's save it. And success. Sweet. Okay, we're in good shape there. Now that we know that's happening, what we can do is let's go open weather data. It's going to be equal to json.parse. And we'll parse out the response that we get back when we do this. So it gives us response. Let's find out, is that the, no, not type, text. We want the text that comes back. So if we remember, our response type is text. So we're going to take that text that came back with the HXR request. We're going to parse it into JSON. is if we don't parse it into JSON, if we want to remember or see what it looks like, what I could do is here, let's go status text content is equal to, the checks are, now let's just save that and see what happens and see what our page looks like. And so we can see it gives us all of this information. So that's the data that's in it. It's not very friendly to look at that way. It's much easier if we parse it out. So instead of putting in the response text after it's been parsed, put in open weather data, so I just have to move this line down. Otherwise, be empty. Now if we put it in object, okay. Well, that's not really that helpful. But if I instead, let's log it out. Save it. And now I can see it puts the JSON here. I have all the JSON occurring on the side over here. So I could take that JSON, if we remember how we could use where a JSON formatter would then format it. If I paste that JSON in from text and say format that JSON so it formats it, a JSON formatter would give that to us. Now we can see it's telling me where we are based on the location. And if I open up the weather, we can see that's an array. It's telling me that the current weather is rain. I have an icon that goes along with that. I have wind, so I can see wind speed happening. I can see lots of different things that are occurring in it. Clouds, my coordinates of the lat and long that I provided. Now my date, time information here, which is being displayed in milliseconds. And if we wanted to, we can parse that, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So we have a lot of good information that we can grab from here. One of the ones, if we look under main, we will see that we have temp. Now we can see that the temperature is registering at 283 something degrees. Wow, that's kind of warm. Now, if we look down here and look under units of measure, so this navigation on the right, all it's doing is scrolling you down. So those are section links. So if I look under units of measurement, we have standard, metric, and imperial. So standard is using Kelvin. So we're looking at those 283 degrees in Kelvin. Now we have metric, which will be Celsius. Imperial will be Fahrenheit. So if I want to change my weather information, so let's go back into my document here. So if we want to see this weather information change, let's just go into our item here. Whoops, I forgot to show you. So when we're calling it, we just add in units equal. Actually, this is the one we want. Ampersand units imperial. That's what we're looking for. So I'll just copy it. Why not, right? Make it easy on ourselves. And I can put it kind of in a lot of different places. So before or after the app ID key, doesn't really matter. I can save that. Now if I go here, let's open up this JSON again. Now if we go back under main, now we can see 50.95. So that's probably a little bit better amount or temperature that we are working with. So that's good. So we've put in lat and long, we've put in our API key, we've changed the units to be something that's a little bit more useful to us. Now what we really want to do is we want to start populating the text on screen and even drop in an image. Once we can do this and we can start working with a way of organizing based on weather conditions, we're going to create our different sprite animations, make some backgrounds, change the backgrounds and sprite animations based on the different weather codes and whether it's day or night. So we'll have a pretty interesting and engaging thing. So I'm going to call populate content, and I'm going to have to pass into it the data, because this weather data, the variable, the content of it, lives inside this function. So at the end of set weather, it's gone unless we pass it to that next function we call. Otherwise, it won't know about it. Because if you define a variable inside a set of curly braces, it stays in those curly braces. So we have to pass it forward. So I'll call function populate content, and inside that we need to pass in that parameter. And I'll pass in Openweathermap. Open weather data. There we go. Now we got one too many closed curlies. All right. Put in my end. Populate content. Okay. Whoop. All right. So now what I want to do is grab. I'm going to try and prevent my line. Things will get really long, so I'm going to store an icon. Now, the icon that I'm working with and grabbing is under weather. If I expand that out, I will see that there's an icon, 10D. Now, if I look at our weather condition codes, and if we look at list of condition codes, here it is, and it tells me the list of condition codes and what they look like. Well, here are those, and it tells me how to get the URL. So if the weather code is 10D, so that would be rain and daytime, this is now what the URL is going to be to get it. So openweathermap.org image wn/10D. So that tells me how to get it. So what I want to do is when I grab that code, I'm going to put that code into that URL value so that I can work with it. So let's see what that looks like when I write it. So we'll say code is going to be equal to openweatherdata.weather. Actually, I don't want to call it code. I'm going to call it icon. I'm going to match what it says in the JSON here. Icon is under weather. And now, if we look there, it tells us it's an array. There's only one thing in the array, but it tells us it's an array. Now, there's only one thing in this array because we are getting current weather data. If we were getting weather where we had a forecast or historical weather data, well, then we would probably have more information in that array. But those features are not in the free level on Openweathermap. So now, I'm going to get that icon from here. Now, to verify, this is working before we continue on, I'm just going to set my text content equal to icon. Let's see how that works. Go over here and 10D. Sweet. So we know it's working. All right. So knowing it's working is good. Now we can try and show that image. Remember that we have an image element here that we want to set its source property. So to do that, I'll say icon image dot set attribute, and the attribute I'm going to set inside quotes, I say src, not SCR, SRC. The number of times I've mistyped that and had students mistype it, I can't even count anymore. It's a very common thing. Now I'm going to do a template literal so I can pass in this icon into it. So I will do backtick https:// and then it's openweathermap.org/img/wn/ and now $ curly brace icon. And then after the curly brace, we do at 2x.png. Now, let's save that and see what we get. We can see it put an icon in. It's kind of hard to see the cloud on the white background, so we'll change that here in just a moment and make it so we can see something happening. Now, what I want to do is instead of putting the text content there, I'm going to change it. So I want to instead go temp : and now I want to show the temperature. Now the temperature, so $ curly braces, open weather data. Now if we remember when we look over here, let's open up our JSON under main temp. So by having the JSON kicked out over here, it allows us to find what we're looking for a little bit easier. So let's save that, see what we get. Temp 50.95. Okay, well, couple things I want to do here. First, what I want to do is I want to round that off. Now the good part is, let me select the P as well. Let me highlight. Put in parentheses, I'll put that because now I'm going to say math.round. So JavaScript has great math operations. We can round things, we can round up, we can round down using floor or ceil. Floor for rounding down, ceil for, as in ceiling, for rounding up. So CEIL, or I can just round it where if it's greater than 0.5 it goes up, less than 0.5 goes down. All right, so let's save that and see how it looks. And now temp 51. What would be even cooler is not only if it said 51, but if it said degrees Fahrenheit. So now what we can do is, turns out, if you Google it, HTML code for degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, I actually Googled it to find out what is the character combination I want to put into it. And I don't want to do degrees Celsius, I want to do degree Fahrenheit. So it gives me the degree sign and the capital letter F. Turns out, all we have to do is put in this escape code character of ampersand, pound, or hashtag 8457. All right. I think we can do that. So after the curly brace before the backtick, so I go ampersand, hashtag 8457, semicolon. Because normally we do semicolons as part of those codes. So now let's save this and see what we get. Go over here and ampersand 8457 semicolon. Well, that's not right. Well, actually, it's completely right. Because what we have to remember is we said text content. Text content will take and strip out any information that is HTML, like this, that's an HTML code, and just render it as text for your security purposes. So the way around that is, because we know where this data is coming from, we'll say inner HTML. When we choose inner HTML, what it does is it allows us to set the text, but we can also put HTML tags in it as well. And now when I save that, temperature 51 degrees Fahrenheit, and now we have the image code, that icon. That code is what we'll be working with, because when we get our weather condition codes here, we're going to create animations for these 3, 6, 9 So there's 9 different weather conditions. There's day and night versions. We could make 18 animations, or we could do 9 animations and make them similar and do color overlays or changes in the color to represent day and night. So, we might need maybe 10 animations to pull it off, because day and night, when it's clear, you could do a sun and moon. So you could do separate sun and moon as part of it, but then the rest of it, when it's cloudy, rainy and snowy and thunderstormy, you really just need to kind of make the whole scene dark or look like night. So we'll look at that in the next video. But right now our goal is to get this working, which we've been able to do. What I want to do now is just pull up a little CSS just to tidy things up and make it look a little bit better. It's always a good practice to get into, is to make your projects look good even if they're small. So if I set my background color, I'm going to go grab blue violet on it because that's the kind of mood I'm in. I'll put my text color white, not wheat. We'll go for white. And finally, I'm going to set my font family. And this time, when I can see the list of things that I have here, I want to go for a sans serif typeface, and I'm going to choose Lucidia Sans because, hey, why not? So let's save it, see what it looks like, go back to our page. Purple, I can see the text, there's the clouds there. So now what we're going to do in the next iteration of this is we will build a JavaScript Canvas, and then we will have our different sprite animations. And based on the weather condition codes, we're going to play a particular animation. We'll also look at how we could do some pixel filtering on that canvas to tint it so we can make the background artwork become day or night, and a lot of fun stuff to clean it up so that we have more than just this static thing. But for right now, it's still pretty cool that we can go grab an image, we can get that temperature information, we can put it in, we could show, and list the location of where we are if we felt that was important to do so. That is, of course, contained inside here. So if we look at where we have name Brooklyn Park, so we could put that in as well as something inside our text that we are putting in. So, well, we don't want to type it, but instead what I can simply do is put in $ curly brace, close curly brace, and then I will do \n to create a line break. It's HTML, therefore I can get away with doing that. And now inside this, it will be openweatherdata.name. And let's see what we get. Brooklyn Park, and we didn't get our line break. So the /n isn't working because I forgot when I'm doing inner HTML. What I really want to do is put in the break tag. So to put in that line break tag, what we want to do instead is delete that, put in a bracket BR / close bracket. Now let's save that, see how it's looking. Now it's on 2 lines. That's working a little bit better. So again, next iteration, we're going to make a canvas and start populating that canvas with animations.